Hello, specifically Dan, and hello everybody else. Just running you through another saber that I put together. This was a saber that I built a few months ago, and Dan has decided to pick this up from the Etsy. So we've made some changes, made a couple customizations, lots of new config work, lots of new blade work. So hopefully now it's all finished for you, Dan. Thank you for bearing with me on this one. There's been a lot of things to sort and a lot of strange diameters to work with, but we're finally there. You finally have a working saber. This is the 89Sabers OWK1. Gorgeous, gorgeous hilt. 2 buttons. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's got a lovely gold-plated blade plug that obviously sits in the top here. Ends up looking like that. And that's pretty much the hilt itself. I think you've made a very good choice. This one also comes with the detachable silver ring down the bottom here, so you can swap it for the episode 2 configuration. I believe with the holes through the silver ring it's the episode 1 configuration. I can't remember which way around it is, but you can change that to whatever your preference is. So at the moment this is completely empty, nothing inside. So let's get the chassis in. In order to do that, if the chassis ever comes out for whatever reason, you just unscrew this entire lower pommel section, which unscrews all the way like that, and it opens up down there. The lower CoverTech knob has also got a screw attached to it. I've glued the screw to the CoverTech, so you never need an Allen key to change anything on this saber. You will need to use an Allen key for the blade retention, which is this little tiny grub screw at the top. But in order to take the chassis in and out and to boot it and things like that, you'll only need to unscrew this CoverTech. You won't need to unscrew the pommel. But I will unscrew the CoverTech as well now, just so you can see how that looks. That just unscrews. And then this whole lower silver section slides off, and that will allow you to see the chassis inside the saber. So let's take a look at the chassis. It is a 2-button setup. It's a Proffie 2.2 board, a 24mm speaker, I believe, and a chrome-wrapped 18650 battery down the bottom, 2 brass tactile switches at the top, and then a Shtok neopixel connector at the top. The chassis is the Goth 3 Designs chassis. It is a very tight fit in this saber. So the machining, I mentioned this to you already, Dan, but the machining can vary from hilt to hilt, and this one is very, very snug. It's supposed to be a 1-inch diameter on the inside. It's actually more like 0.99 or something like that, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a big difference. I had to do a lot of sanding to get this chassis to fit, and also a lot of sanding on the blade to make that work as well. I know we're in the process of talking about blade options. We can work something out regarding that, whether I send you a sanded blade or you can sand a 1-inch blade yourself. Either's fine, but we have a working blade now. We have one that fits, so we're all good to go on that front. The chassis, actually, we'll talk about the battery as well quickly. So the battery, if this ever needs to come out to charge, the way to get this battery out effectively is just tap the top bit. So if you've got the neopixel connector pointing towards you and you just knock it on your finger a couple times, the battery will start to hang out, and then you can just pull it out with a finger. It's the easiest way to do it. And then you can recharge the battery as needed. When inserting the battery back into the chassis, the nipple of the battery goes up at the top towards the neopixel connector. Don't put it in the other way around, you'll be in trouble. So you can see kind of the elevated tab down there is for the flat side. So flat side in towards the middle of the chassis, push it in.
I have a bad feeling about this.
And then it clicks in. That was already booted. So I'll turn it off and just turn it on again so you can hear the boot sound.
Council have granted me permission to train you.
So that's one of the first fonts that we got on there. It's the Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1 font. And then I'm just going to slide the whole thing inside. The buttons obviously need to face the 2 buttons together. So when you're sliding it, keep the buttons aligned. And then you just push it, give it a little wiggle until it lines up with the internal mechanism. And then it slides all the way in. When you're sliding the chassis in, don't push on the speaker. You might perforate the drum and then you'll be in a whole world of trouble. I just get it in as far as I can like that, and then because I've sanded it, you can slide it down with your thumb. So you just kind of like shimmy it down into the chassis. Get it down so that it's as flush as with the bottom as you can get it. And then what you can do is put the silver piece back on. Obviously, if you're just booting the saber, the silver piece wouldn't have come off. So you won't need to do that, and then you also won't need to rescrew in the pommel. But when the chassis is out, you can see it protrudes just a touch. But if you put the pommel to it and start screwing ever so gently, as soon as the threads catch, it'll push the chassis down inside the saber. I may need to push it in a little bit further first, so that it catches the threads. Yeah, we're gonna go in a little bit further. So I'm just gonna pull this down, give a little nudge. There we go. Thread it. Obviously, the only time the chassis would need to come out is if you're changing the battery or if you're changing anything with the config, but the Proffieboard is still twist on. The Proffieboard is still exposed, so you can make any sort of config alterations or changes that you like there. I've included a copy of the config file on the Proffieboard, so if this ever goes to another installer, they can easily see what I did to set up all the unique blade styles and all the saber fonts. I changed a couple things on a few of the individual fonts to make them sound a bit better, and also set up all the preons for things like the Rogue One hallway scene, which I'll show you in a minute. And then I also set up some custom blade styles for the other fonts you wanted set up on there that didn't necessarily have canonical blade styles. Anyway, so with the saber off and off at the kill switch, in order to boot it, you obviously will take off the cover tech, rotate the silver piece around, and then you can see the kill switch. Click that on.
Master, destroy us!
It'll play the boot sound. It's pretty loud for a 24mm speaker, it's quite impressive. And then basically all you got to do is swivel the shroud around, and you can see there's a screw hole down the bottom, right there, and you just line them up. And then screw the cover tech in. And previously you would have had to do this with an Allen key, so gluing the screw in was probably the easiest thing to do. Okay, and then when that's screwed in, you are good to go. So we've got a few different controls on this one. I do my usual gesture control setup, which is twist on, twist off. So if you give it a short, sharp twist, it'll boot up like that, and then you can twist again to turn it off. And then this red one is your power button. This gold one is your auxiliary button. So when the saber is off, if you press and hold auxiliary and click power,
battery level 91%.
It'll tell you the battery level, and that will also appear on the blade, a certain distance along the blade and a certain color to indicate the battery level. And then apart from that, you can click auxiliary to just go through the fonts and click power to turn it on. So if you click auxiliary with the saber pointing upwards, we'll go forwards through the list. If you click with it pointing downwards, we'll go backwards through the list. So let's just run through the fonts quickly. We've got the Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1 font, and I think there's another one on there as well, possibly by KRSabers.
Meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep, another one.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
That's the Anakin Tusken Slayer font. Same font again, but with the Tusken variation.
Master Yoda.
Yoda's font. This is Darth Vader Rogue One. I've tried to keep all the Vader fonts in sequence order. So you got Rogue One. That's Empire Strikes Back. And that one's Return of the Jedi.
Chancellor Palpatine.
Palpatine.
He's been working on that thing for weeks. What kind of lightsaber could he possibly build with the junk we have laying around?
That's the sword font. I think it's the Ezra font. I can't remember actually what that one's from, but that was one you requested.
I will give you so much more.
It's Exegol.
Might to the final order will soon be ready.
And Return of the Sith.
Now this is pod racing.
Pod Racer font. That's a fun one.
Prepare a boarding party.
And that's the custom tweaked Rogue One hallway Vader.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And we're back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. So with all of that in mind, let's get a blade in it and show off some stuff. Like I said, the blade fitment is quite tight. I had to sand down this blade quite a bit to get it to fit, but obviously you only have to sand down the first like 2 inches. So it's not really the end of the world. It's pretty simple to do, but it's so snug. I'm probably not even going to put a blade retention screw in just for now. Yeah, it's making good contact. As with all NeoPixel blades, make sure it makes contact with the PCB inside, otherwise your blade won't work. But yeah, let's give this a go. So we'll start with the Obi-Wan Kenobi font, and I'll show you some of the blade styles, because I put a lot of time into those. I'm hoping that you're happy with all of them. They're all really, I think they're all quite special. So yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's a pretty basic font, this one. And you've got all the usual proffie features, which is if you click the auxiliary button, you'll get the blaster deflect, which is a white flash. If you press and hold auxiliary and click power, you can change the color by twisting. And if you click power, it'll accept this new color. If you click auxiliary, it will revert back to the original color.
Revert.
And then if you press and hold power and click auxiliary, it'll enter lightning block up, force lightning block. And then if you press and hold auxiliary, it'll enter blaster deflect mode, which is every time you swing it, you'll get a blaster block. And then you click auxiliary again to turn it off. And you've also got all the other gesture controls like the clashes and stabs and swings, all sorts of things like that. That's an Obi-Wan Kenobi font for you. It's hitting everything right. This is the trouble. I'd usually be using a shorter test blade, but I didn't have one sanded down, so I'm going to take everything off the walls in here if I'm not careful. Right, so let's go through some of the fonts. So that was the Obi-Wan Kenobi one.
Meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Another Obi-Wan Kenobi is pretty much the same blade.
I've got a bad feeling about
This is the Tusken Terminator. This could be the Geonosis one. If it's green, it's Geonosis. There we go, Tusken Terminator Geonosis. Nice one, and it's got the Geonosian blaster blocks. It's pretty cool. Power that off. Tusken one. This one, every time the blade clashes, you'll get a Tusken death sound. It's pretty brutal. It's nasty. That one's really crackly. It's really powerful.
Master Yoda.
Master Yoda. This one's very similar to Luke's Episode 8 font, actually, this one. Another green. This is the Rogue One one, so here I'm going to talk to you about some of the more custom stuff that we set up. A lot of the fonts come with tracks that you can play, and Proffieboard has a built-in track player. If you hold the saber horizontally and press and hold power, this one doesn't have a track, so you'll get that sound. But if I switch to one that does, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, pretty sure that one's got a track, so let's try. Press and hold. There we go. And then you click power to select the track, and it'll start playing. So it's obviously the music from some of the scenes that these fonts will be relevant to. Really vibrant red in these. It's a little bit more orange to match the movie, so I made that on purpose. The Rogue One Vader. The Rogue One Vader is that's very loud. The Rogue One Vader is a lot more red because that's a sequel movie, so they managed to get the colors right.
Chancellor Palpatine.
Go for Palpatine. So what you had there was a Prion, which is the sound of the saber coming out of his sleeve. Just set up. So you get a little delayed ignition. Pretty cool.
He's been working on that thing for weeks.
This one's nice.
What kind of lightsaber could he possibly build with the junk we have laying around?
So I went for a kind of like a blue-white flickering blade for this one with a bit of a cooldown at the end. Because there wasn't really a blade style defined for this one, so I had to make it up as I go, but I think it works pretty well. So it's like kind of light blue cyan with ice blue down the bottom and waves of white moving up it. And then when you power down, you'll get a little cooldown at the base.
I will give you so much more.
This is probably one of the more impressive like Prions.
What could you give me?
Everything.
Very meaty sounding font.
What could you give me?
Everything. Might of the final order will soon be ready.
And this one's also got some Emperor Prions.
Do not fear that
Feeble attack, my faithful. Nothing will stop the return of the Sith.
There you go. Very crackly, very nice.
Now this is pod racing.
Pod racing. So this is a very specific sound font I made. I tried to match the color of like the ion engines on the pod thrusters. So it's like a purple with some hints of yellow in it every now and then. But this font sounds great. I'm really glad that you got this one put on there. It's incredible. It's really unique. And you can see there's like pulses of gold moving up the blade every now and then. Crazy cool, crazy cool. So this is the Rogue One one. I set this one up to use the track from the scene, basically. So if you press and hold, or if you click power, it ignites straight away. So what you can do is if you press and hold power, it'll play the music from the scene, the soundtrack. So then it's up to you to ignite it at just the right time. Let's see if I can do it. out. Brutal. Let's pop this blade out. Come on. Very snug. There we go. So yeah, that is your saber. And then obviously to turn it off, unscrew the cover tech, spin the shroud around, and flip the kill switch. And that's pretty much it. With the blade plug in, just quickly, this illuminates this center ring, so that looks quite nice, so you can leave this blade plug in if you like. I'm also making and selling some blade plugs, those are on the way. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I hope you're happy with the saber. It was a real challenge to put together some of the fonts and make everything fit on there. But I'm really glad that you went with the fonts that you did, because I think the saber is very impressive now. I hope you like it. If you've got any problems or any questions, give me a shout and we can see if we can make any last minute changes before I ship it out to you. I know it's been a long time coming for this one. We've had some things to overcome, but we got there. You have a working saber, and I'll try and get this shipped out to you tomorrow or as soon as you see this video and you're happy with it. Yeah, thanks for purchasing from me. Hope you're happy. Hopefully work with you again. May the force be with you. And thanks everybody.